One thing that I've learned working with my dad is he respects me and my decisions that I can make today.
Really, my worth is not in the company, and it's not in what I built. It's really just in my life with the Lord and where my kids are, and my grandkids are, and the fact that, I'm seeing Gen 3 come to know the Lord. That's where my wealth and my worth is.
Nothing I do at Providence Financial is worth losing my relationship with my dad.
It's not what you leave to people, it's what you leave in people.
Hey, it's Bill High for the Family Frameworks podcast. Really glad to welcome Steve Cox and Stephen Cox. There's some relationship in there.
There is a little relationship.
You guys actually work together.
We do.
We do.
Since 2019, part-time, then full-time, we came on board 2020.
That's actually going to be our topic today because, our audience are families. And the idea is, how do families make it work, whether it's just mom, dad, kids, little kids, adult kids. And you guys bring a whole different dynamic by father and son working together. So how's that work?
The most confusing thing is the name. Because, clients say, what do I call you? What do I call him? So that's, when I first wanted to name him after myself, I didn't think about working together and then the problem that would cause. So that's been a little bit of a hurdle. But beyond that, it's been something that we just kind of have been able to work into and kind of develop the rhythm over the years. It's been a growing process. I think for both of us, but it's worked out really well.
All right. So, Stephen, why'd you do this anyway? Want to come join the family business?
No, I mean, it goes back to just being a young kid, and I just wanted to be like my dad. I mean, I remember vividly from a young age, even before high school, I just wanted to be like my dad. And so luckily, the subjects in school that translated to our industry came easy to me and I loved. And going into college, did my undergrad degrees in the investment area, and then followed that up even after school, getting my CFA just to be like my dad. And that's why I did it. I love it. I love helping people. I love doing what we do, but really, I just wanted to be like him.
Yeah. Okay. So let's come back to that. And why? Why did you want? What is it that you saw in your dad growing up that you said, I'd like to be like that?
At the end of the day, my dad loves Jesus, and I know that my dad loves me. And I knew from a young age that my dad made a sacrifice when about 2002, 2003 to leave a job to be at home with me. And that made an impact on me that I wanted to then, not only say thank you for, but I also wanted to relay that or live that out through my life, even today with my kids.
Okay, that's good. So I guess we should back up. What kind of business is this anyway?
Yeah, we're an investment advisory business.
Okay, so what's that mean?
We work with individuals and businesses. We have some donor advised funds, people's giving funds, if you will, that we help manage as well. And we focus primarily on the asset management side, but we do wrap in the planning side, and then we've added the capacity to work with individuals on kind of the legacy piece of planning. We're really good at the technical side of planning, but the legacy piece is something that we wanted to have to give to our clients, but we really didn't have that, so we added staff to bring that on board as well.
Okay. So we're going to come back to the business side a little bit, but I'd like to stay on the track of the family side of it for a bit. And Stephen just mentioned it, but you had another career.
I did. I worked from about 85 on. I started out in accounting, but I didn't like striped ties, so I got into the finance side of life and worked in the institutional investment management business, first as a consultant working with large pension plans, and then I went to work for an asset manager. And
who were some of these companies, by the way?
I worked for a company in Kansas City called DeMarsh Associates for about 5 years, and then landed at Invesco, who at the time was the largest publicly traded investment firm in the world, and worked my way up into being a partner there just servicing clients on the institutional side, like corporations or pension plans, large endowment foundations, that type of thing. And really,
so you were doing well.
I was doing well. Yeah, I was doing very well. And
we were all doing very well.
Yeah, I traveled a lot. They like the frequent flyer miles, and they like the front of the bus, those kind of things. But I was just gone a lot. The better you do in that business, the more you're not home, is really kind of one of the measures of success in that business. And
so you reached a breaking point, I take it.
I don't know if it was a breaking point. I think it was about 2001, 2002, I became a little restless in my work. And so I started looking at, what would it look like if I went and hung out my own shingle and transitioned? Because I saw that the business was moving from the brokerage model, the old stockbroker model, or the old life insurance salesman model, to more like the institutional world, but it wasn't quite there yet. The technology wasn't quite there yet. And so I just kind of put that to a side in 2002, but I never lost the restlessness of that. And so in late 2002, early 2003, I had the opportunity to either move my family again. We'd been in Atlanta, moved back to Kansas City, to move to Louisville and take a leadership position there, and went down, just never felt a peace about it, didn't like it. And so I can remember I came home in late November, early December of 2002, and was reading James Dobson's book, Bringing Up Boys. And really the first page of the book, James Dobson talks about an itinerant preacher whose wife told him, hey, your sons need you at home more than these people need to hear about Jesus, which is a pretty powerful statement. But I said, okay, God, I get it.
Hit you hard.
Yeah, it hit me pretty hard. And so, I went up to New York for a meeting and talked to my boss and said, hey, what's my options here if I don't take this job in Louisville? And one of the options was a pretty nice package. And so I felt like that was a answer to prayer. I didn't know that was an option.
A package to leave,
and didn't know that was an option. So I took the big leap of faith and went from working with $1 billion clients to mom and pops. And so that was
2003?
That was 2003.
So you start this business, and so Stephen, how old were you then?
Yep. I would have been, in 2003, I would have been 13 years old.
13 years old. So pretty formative time of your life.
I'm definitely aware of changes are happening. Looking back, I didn't completely understand everything at that point in time, but I was definitely aware that Dad was doing something different, and that income was going to be different at that point in time.
Yeah. And siblings, you got siblings?
Got one brother, 3 years younger than me. So.
Okay, so you're the older brother.
I am the older brother, yeah.
So you are the OG, the old guy compared to him.
That's exactly right.
Okay, and he's not in the business.
He is not in the business, no.
Yep.
So he lives a couple hours away from us, and he just never, ultimately I don't know why he never really wanted to join the business, but he's completely content with it. And we've talked to him about our relationship, my dad and I's relationship, and his and I's relationship, and how this is all going to work. And he's been just completely open and agrees to everything that we sort of lay out like we would like to have happen. So,
well, I mean, let's acknowledge it though. Not everybody should come join the family business. Not only should they not, but they absolutely should not.
Right. Yeah.
Right. But you had some idea that you wanted to from the early on.
Yeah. Jump into college. I think one of the best things my dad did was say, hey, you're not coming to work for me. Number one, he probably couldn't afford to pay me at that point in time. It was just coming out of 2008. And like everyone else, just things were tight at that point in time. And so, he was like, hey, you need to go find a job somewhere else. And that's what I did. I found an RA in Kansas City, working.
So you might need to translate that.
Yeah, an advisory firm in Kansas City.
So you went to work for another firm.
Yeah, another firm.
Coming out of college.
And it was a great firm, and I loved my time there. But after about 5 or 6 years, it was more of just being restless again, just listening to God, talking with my wife. And I was like, I'm ready to sort of move on, whether it's with somewhere else or with my dad. And she's like, well, I mean, the first person you got to talk to is your dad. So that was great advice. And so
thankful for wives, right?
Very thankful for mine. So I went and talked with her, or I went and talked with my dad, and he said, I think the time is right, but I need to pray about it and think and mull on it. And so, it was probably a two plus year process of starting that initial conversation. Okay, what does this look like, to working full time with my dad in this space? So
a few things I think that we need to try to break down. First is, one, you had some your interest aligned with coming to join the business, and you recognize that early on.
Yeah.
Well, the story could be much different though if your interest was in music or being in the band, leading a band, teaching, but you had an interest. And I think that's something for us to call out for people trying to go be part of that family business.
Yeah. I had noticed as I started working with some individuals that were business owners and their kids were working for them, I observed that the ones where they brought their kids in early, like fresh out of school, that process a lot of times didn't work. It didn't work with the other employees. It didn't work with the family. And also, it just was problematic. So I felt like the one thing I learned really early on was, if any of my kids were going to come work for me, they needed to get some experience outside of my firm, because they'll learn different things, and they'll learn how to work with other people. They'll learn other processes. I don't think my way's the only way to do things, contrary to sometimes what he believes. But I thought that was really important, and so it worked out well. And he got to go to work for a firm that I knew, and I knew the guys, and I knew he'd get really good experience and training there.
Yeah, and I think that is so important, as we're calling out the second idea now. So first was you had an interest that matched, but the second is go work somewhere else. Right. Go have a different boss. What was it like to have a different boss at the beginning?
Because it's the only way I know. I think normal. It was good to have. It was good that they could give me instruction there and give me guidance there on how they do things and what they do and why they do it. I made great friendships. I mean, even last week I had lunch with a couple people from my old firm, and to this day I'm grateful for the knowledge, the institutional knowledge that they gave me, and I wouldn't change it at all going forward.
I want to come back to one more thing, Stephen, young guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stephen, you talked about just going to your wife first, and I think the idea of just getting counsel from those closest to you, which would be a spouse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'll admit I don't always seek counsel the fastest from her, but when I do have any situation, I mean, we were talking last night, just talking about our family stuff last night. She is one of the most discerning people I know. She is the one that when I do have a difficult I need to have either a difficult conversation, I'm in a difficult situation, she's the one I can go to at any time and have that conversation of, this is where I am and I don't really know what's happening. Please give me some wisdom on which way I should go from here. Now,
Steve, I assume that you went to your wife as well. That's a big deal to bring your son in. And
right. I think for us, it wasn't really a point in time conversation, but it was kind of once he brought up the idea, we talked kind of through it over time. And his mom, my wife, is a little different than his wife, and that she doesn't really want to be involved in those decisions. So I have to get her involved in a way that she doesn't know she's getting involved in the decision process, and then seek it. We talked through it over time and talked through just the dynamics of that relationship. And then I also talked to some friends that I trusted their advice as well, and got counsel that way. But yes, I did. But I have to do it a different way than he can do it with his spouse.
Yep. So coming in, though, once you get started, did you guys establish any ground rules? What's that like at the beginning?
It was the Wild West.
Yeah, we had no ground rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's probably one thing you do differently.
Yes, I would say so. But I think it goes back to sort of the values that were instilled in me early on. Number one, I respect my dad and his decision making. But one thing that I've learned working with my dad is he respects me and my decisions that I can make today. And I know that he trusts me with any decision within the business. And I think he's done a really good job from the beginning balancing the son versus the coworker aspect of life. And I think that that's really important from my perspective is that when I came to work with my dad, there was a period of time where I was going to him for all of his institutional knowledge, learning his ways of how he wanted to do things. But I would say in the first 3 to 6 months, I was able to what I felt like be trusted doing the work and making not just busy work decisions, but making decisions that were going to impact the firm, our clients directly, and allowing me to make those decisions with just sort of him. I mean, I think at the end of the day, if I would have made a bad decision, he would have said something. So, but just making me feel valued.
Yep. And you guys have both been to our family legacy workshop, so you know about this question around family values. So I'm going to start with you first, and then I'm going to go to you, Stephen. So what are the Cox family? I know your wife's name, so Beth and Steve Cox family values.
Right. We got to ours a little different than how you teach it today because you weren't around when we had to get to ours. I mean, you were around, but you weren't doing this.
Well, most people say, "I wish we would have known you 30 years before."
You were defending corporations at the time. I
That's
think.
right.
But we did have a guy at our church that kind of taught this a little bit. I went and met with him on a one-on-one, and he taught a class at church, and so I kind of put it together that way. But initially, my first family value I developed when I was probably 15, 16, because my parents split. My dad left us, and I've been really kind of on my own since then. And so the first family value was that if I got married, and at the time I wasn't sure I'd ever wanted to be married just because of what that looked like for them, that I was going to make it work regardless. Now, that may not be the best attitude at the time, but that's the only attitude I knew at the time. But then as I got older and met Beth and started dating, and then we got married, we figured out what that looked like. How do you make that work? And so for us, it's accepting each other where we're at, coming alongside. She's done a great job of coming alongside of me. She raised the boys the first 13 years of us having kids.
Traveling around.
Yeah, I'm out, living it up out in airports. And then since then, through the good and the bad, she's just been a good partner alongside and supportive. And so, the core family value was we're gonna make the marriage work. And we actually celebrated our 40th last night, or yesterday. And so that was a pretty cool milestone. Our second family value was that we wanted our kids to feel loved and safe at home. And I wasn't always the best dad, but when we got into a difficult situation, I tried to always create an environment that I never had, and I always called it kind of no rank, that the kids could express to me whatever they wanted to express. It had to be respectful, but they didn't have to be fearful of what they said. I wasn't going to hold what they said over. And I never had that environment. So I tried to do that. And, at times I did a good job doing that. Probably more times I didn't, but I tried to do that. But we wanted to instill an environment where the kids could feel safe. And then the other thing I was very honest with them that they both got treated equally but different, because they responded to things differently. For only having two kids, they are very polar opposites in a lot of their lives, and in some ways they're very similar. And so as we work through that, then we just try to be honest with them that we're gonna treat you the same, but it may appear to be different because you respond to things differently. And then I think the other thing is that we were going to have a home that was, focused on Jesus and be very welcoming and very open. And I believe that stewardship should be a thread through your whole life, not just your pocketbook. And so we've tried to be very open with everything God's given us, from our home, our food, whatever, so that they could feel comfortable bringing their friends in a house whenever they wanted to, whoever they wanted, however many they wanted. So those are kind of the values that we try to instill in our kids and even in our grandkids today.
Okay, so let me restate. Okay,
Sure.
Let's see how we do here. So I'm going to actually do in a little bit different order. So I hear faith,
Right.
this commitment to Christ as a key first value, if you will.
Right.
But then the second value would be the commitment to family.
Correct.
And then really the third one is a communication value, which is this is a safe environment.
Right.
You've got the freedom to communicate, and I want to make it safe so you're not afraid to communicate.
Correct.
And then the fourth is stewardship.
Correct.
What's that value mean to you, stewardship?
Stewardship. For me, the value is it's not mine, it's God's, and I'm here to steward it. I've always been very grateful that sometimes I wasn't grateful when I was going through it, but when looking back, I could see how God got me through difficult situations from the time my dad left to getting married, through difficult health issues with my family, with myself, through all that things that God's been very faithful, and because of that, I want to be faithful with what God's given me, and regardless of whether it's money, vehicle, things, time, whatever. And I just think it's important to be a faithful steward of all that God's blessed you with.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so Stephen, you've talked about this idea that you were very much aligned with those values. Maybe they weren't articulated and put up on a wall, but you aligned with what you saw modeled.
Yeah.
Nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think today, they've really influenced the values that my wife and I have sort of.
Okay, that's where we're going.
Yeah, exactly.
So you and your wife have worked on this.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
we did get Bill High's class, and so we've come up with a little little phrase here. So the way we remember it is going to be I follow God. So I is integrity. So we want our family to be honest and be truthful with in every situation, even the difficult situations. Faith is the second one. So our faith is.
So there you go. You guys are aligned there.
Exactly.
For sure. Yep.
L is love, loving God and loving others. W is wisdom. There are so many difficult decisions that we have to make in life, and I don't know how people make those decisions without relying on God. And we really want that instilled in our kids, is that whenever we do need to make a decision, it's not just your mom and I that are making decisions. We are praying, seeking God for wisdom to make those right decisions. And then G is generosity. So from a young age, like any good Baptist home, we taught tithing. But it's much more than that. Like my dad said, it's opening up your home to people. We host a life group at our house every Monday night, and almost every Monday night. And, we have friends that have gone through difficult financial situations, and we make sure that we invite them over for dinner so we can sit down and talk around a table together. And a lot of times it does involve your physical time and effort and money, but it's not always just the money piece. It's also the time that you take to spend with people around you, and really trying to make sure that they know that they are loved and loved by God, whether they're believers or not.
Yep. Okay, so inevitably has to be. You're working together, and you started talking about it, Stephen. There's different hats that you wear. So for him, it's, I'm father, but I'm also leading the firm. And you just said it, clients have got to come first. You can't put your son first here, because you're a fiduciary. You are responsible for serving those clients, and you're wearing different hats too. Your son and also employee, heavily involved in all this. How do you do this? There's inevitably conflicts.
Yeah. I'm enough like my dad and enough different that we haven't had too many significant conflicts. But I come back to the few conflicts that we do have. My dad made a lighthearted joke about it, about, I defer to the gray hair of the room. But what it comes down to is at the end of the day, I respect my dad and I respect his authority and his decision as owner and CEO and president, whatever title you want to give him, of the company. And at the end of the day, I know that he and I have the same goals of, we want this company to last, multiple generations potentially. And so how does that look today? It looks today as we don't get in a knockdown, drag out fight over anything, because nothing, at the end of the day, nothing is worth that when it comes to our relationship as coworkers or our relationship as father and son. Because to me, I've never experienced, but I've heard of people that, I was listening to a sermon earlier today where a father and a son were in business together. The son and the father no longer talk today. There's a lot of things that happened obviously between then, but that's nothing I do at Providence Financial is worth losing my relationship with my dad. And so ultimately it's just the respect of knowing, hey, we both want to get to the same place. And so I can only think of one, maybe two times that's ever even gotten there. But, it's just, okay, we're going to do it that way. And that's just the way it's done.
Yeah.
If we've had a knockdown drag out, I'm not aware of it. So he may have gone back to his office and been pretty angry with a decision. But for the most part, all the major decisions we sit down, we just work through it, because I don't want to be the guy that gets a decision handed to him. I had very few bosses like that in my business career. Most of them were guys that built teamwork and they set direction, and they let us set the map to get to that point. And I liked working like that, so I want to have an environment for that for my team.
So my daughter works for me, and you guys understand that. But I'd say that this is actually her idea. But one of the best things that she does is she'll actually come to me and she'll say, "Hey, I've got my daughter hat on now. I just need you to be my dad."
Right.
And that really helps. So identifying the role is super helpful.
Yeah.
The only time it ever came close to anything was when my wife and I had sold our house and we hadn't found a house to move into yet. And so we moved into my parents' basement. And so Dad and I
they're living with us and we're working together.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah. My dad and I were together all the time. And we haven't mentioned this yet, but one of the problems we have is just being a small business, technology allows you to work all the time too. So even at dinner with my mom and my wife and my kids, we have to be careful not to talk business. Besides that, so going back to, I had sold my house, moved into my parents' basement, and I want to say, it had been a few weeks, and I come home from work, and I go, "Elise, we're going on vacation next week." And she looks at me and goes, and this is before our kids were in school or anything, so it was, a pretty easy lift, and she goes, "What's going on?" I said, "I have got to leave. I have got to get away. I can't do this anymore. I told Dad I'm gone. He said, okay, we're going on vacation next week." But honestly, that was the time with our family. At that time, it was 4 of us, and it was awesome. My Trey still talks about that vacation to this day. And that's what I needed to reset and come back with a clear mind. And there was nothing bad happening at work, but it was just, I had spent so many years, being a husband and a father to my boys. I didn't have to, I just was living at home again with my parents, and this time with a wife and 2 kids. It was just time to get out and go be apart for a little bit. But had a vacation, came back, and everything's been smooth sailing since then. Yeah. Found a house shortly after.
To be honest with you, the hardest thing I have to deal with is Beth, my wife, doesn't understand that I find out what's going on with them at home. But if I hear a conversation, I figure if he wants to tell me about it, he's going to, but I'm just not going to ask. And that's kind of my nature anyway. So that's pretty easy. But I just don't think, I'm just not going to get involved so if he hangs the phone up and he hangs up a little loud, I don't worry about it. I don't ask. And so sometimes the dinner conversation at home is what's going on with them. And if I don't know, she wants to know why I don't know. And, so that's a dynamic that I think people don't think about. And I didn't think about that.
Yeah, keeping those boundaries for sure.
It's just none of my business.
So is that okay if we do a little bit of diagnostic with you guys?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and this is to help other families going through this, but our second course is all about navigating family conflict because we're human. We're going to have conflict. But one of the things, Stephen, you started doing, I'm not even sure you actually recognized it, but you actually started articulating some rules of behavior. So we typically tell families, but certainly family businesses, is to write down your rules of behavior, the diagnostic that would say, okay, if we write them down, because it could be that you'll have Stephen or Trey come join the business too, but I'm not sure if you recognize it, but you said, what am I going to do? I'm going to respect my elders, or I'm going to respect their position. But then it's also this idea that you're also going to come back and do what? You're going to say, I have a role to perform, and I have to recognize there's a difference between them. And then a third one that you guys started going to was, we're going to honor the boundaries. Because I have a role as a son, but I also have a role as employee, or I have a role as CEO and father. And so that open line of communication around that.
Yeah. I'm glad to know that we do that without writing it down.
Well, it becomes actually more important when you start talking about a generational business.
Yeah.
Because then you don't want to have to relearn the rules.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think it's just the way that I was brought up and raised. When you articulated those back to us, I think they're spot on, because, just because I respect my dad doesn't mean that I don't articulate what I'm still thinking. Because at the end of the day, I do think that it is our firm's responsibility to do the best we can do for our clients. And there are times where sort of during that conversation, he does ultimately change his mind on how we're going to proceed. But the respect isn't necessarily a respect as in his decision is final. It's a respect of, you can't let the father-son relationship come in to the business relationship. You have to be able to have that hard conversation and then basically create a firewall to be able to still be his son at the end of the day. And
I think for me, what I learned was as a CEO or founder, whatever, one of my jobs is set direction. And so I've learned that when he and the rest of the team want to bring in something like AI, so we studied it. I wanted to get comfortable with it. I want to understand from a regulatory standpoint any issues with that. Then I said, here's the non-negotiables. And so within these non-negotiables, you guys figure out how to implement that. And so that's how now we've kind of settled into our roles. Is I set direction. I set direction within the compliance boundaries we have within our industry. And then they come back to me and say, here's how we can do this. We want to do this. And we'll say, yeah, that makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's just set this to the side for now and figure out how to work that in later. And that seems to be a good rhythm for us.
Yeah. So, Stephen, if you did have a really difficult conversation that you needed to have at the company, how would you start that?
I think the great thing about the relationship my dad and I have is we're able and I don't know why, and I don't know how we got here. So I don't know what the secret sauce is to replicate it. But my dad and I can have an open conversation from the very beginning of an issue at work. We're just very black and white with the issue up front. I try not to add a whole lot of color, or I don't try to soften the blow at all. I just say, this is the problem we need to address. Or how do we, if this is the problem we need to address, what are sort of those next steps to address that problem? And I don't think that we really, at the end of the day, we don't always try to solve everything initially. It's more of, let's get the problem on the table. And just because we're a smaller firm, we don't have the ability to just block a whole day off to go sit at a conference room somewhere just to solve our company's problems. So if we're going through something big, and one thing we've talked about is, succession planning and those kind of things, we need to talk about this now. We don't have to have an answer now, but we got to start the conversation. And I think it's just being very black and white and open.
I think the benefit we have that maybe other people may not have is that we both are analysts at heart. And so that's just kind of our first response to every situation is to lay out just the facts. You're an attorney by training, same thing. You lay out the facts and we deal with it that way. And neither one of us are very emotional. I've got one emotion that I have to keep in check, but beyond that, we're not emotional. We don't get our feelings hurt easily. So I think that benefits us. We both have that same makeup in us. We have a lot of other differences that also are complementary, but I think that just by being analytical and tend not to get our feelings hurt easily makes some of those things work well for us. It may not work well for other people.
Yeah. So again, being a bit diagnostic for you, you guys are actually articulating what we'll often see in a family code of conduct. So one that you just said, Stephen, a moment ago is we're going to go one-on-one. And then where you both went is we don't use color words. And then the idea that we're going to listen to understand. So we don't listen to solve, we listen to understand versus listening to respond, which is there's a big difference on that. So you try to go through those handful of kind of ideas as a way to navigate that conflict. The oldest family-owned business in the world that made it 46 generations was Kongo Gumi. And it took them until the 16th generation, hopefully it doesn't take you that long, before they codified their code of behavior. Now theirs was kind of broad ranging because there wasn't a family business class that you could go to at the time, but they outlined some of those basic rules of what they wanted, and they made it 46 generations before they sold to private equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and he talked about succession planning, and he doesn't even know this. This will be all new on the podcast. But about 6 or 8 months ago, I was really struggling with kind of losing my importance, I guess maybe, because I had agreed to once we get the taxes done, sell a piece of the business to him and another employee. But it kind of hit me that I was going to transition what I had built. And I really feel like God had built it. I really do feel that. But I mean, in your human nature, being a man, you kind of, that hit me. And it took me a couple of months to figure out what was going on emotionally inside of me. And, my wife goes, "What is wrong with you?" I said, "I have no idea." But I kind of figured that out. And then I had to work through that really my worth is not in the company and it's not in what I built. It's really just in my life with the Lord and where my kids are, my grandkids are, and the fact that, I'm seeing Gen 3 come to know the Lord. That's where my wealth and my worth is. but still in the human side of me that I really had to struggle through that a few months ago.
I think everybody noticed.
And but it was difficult.
Well, that's probably a good place where we can start wrapping up. You wrote a book here called Achievable Dreams.
Right.
Of course, my favorite chapter in the book is on legacy.
Correct. And you're quoted in there, I think.
Yeah, but you have another quote in here where you talk about what is legacy?
Right. It's not what you leave to people, it's what you leave in people.
Yeah, it's what you leave in them. So what are you trying to leave?
I think if I could only leave one thing, I think my kids saw this through a couple of events that they watched me manage for the organization, is integrity at all cost. Because without integrity, I don't believe that God can really have the full impact in your life. And I just don't want to ever sell my integrity for any price.
That's good. All right, Stephen, any last words for our audience here? Any parting words, advice that you'd give them?
No, I mean, for us, this has been working with my dad is always been a dream. But I also understand that not every family can work well together. And but if you have the opportunity to, I encourage you to do it. I get to spend 8 to 9 hours a day with my dad, and I get to look up to him still today, 36 years later, and just at the example that he's still setting for me as a father and a husband, and one day running Providence Financial. So
yeah, that's a good word. Hey, thanks for being on, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.